And we are back. Like a rogue that failed the sneak roll, I've once again gotten myself into something way over my head. But how are we all doing, folks? It's time now to continue our episode of 17 of Forgotten Table Tales. We just wrapped up Obojima, and this is going to be the start of a new series of videos. This one in particular will be focusing on not a book, not one particular world. We're going to be talking about something that I think everyone wants to know if you ever play D&D, and that is how to form your own campaign. Now, I brought with me, of course, as always, my lovely co-host, Chitter Charmer.
Hello there.
But we also have a special guest today, another fellow D&D maniac himself, known for his wonderful episodes on Twitch about him writing his own campaign from start to bottom, focusing on world building and, of course, various other creations. I'm talking to Remy.
Setting. I barely know her.
Remy had been holding on to that since
Continue.
Remy had been holding on to that since we started, but I'm happy that he got it out of his system. Okay. Now, before we get into the topic proper, Remy, this is your first time on Forgotten Table Tales, so first of all, welcome.
It sure is.
And why don't you
Thank you. I feel welcome.
I'm glad you do.
Mm-hmm.
But why don't you tell everyone a little bit about themselves, okay?
I'm Remy. I am something of, I guess it would be a variety VTube streamer. I do a lot of D&D writing. I have done a little bit of very awful painting recently. I enjoy my games. But mostly I do love my Dungeons and Dragons, and that is what has brought me onto the podcast here.
And we're happy to have you. And we're going to add one more guest. This one will be just because she wants to say hi. We're going to add my lovely partner in crime and fellow D&D nut, Bunsy. Say hello, Bunsy.
Finally.
Sorry, we were recording, so we couldn't really interact with you. But Bunsy, now that you're here, would you like to say anything about today's episode or anything in particular about D&D?
Please go follow this amazing man because he deserves all the ovation that he needs because he does amazing edits along with Cheddar.
Aw, thank you.
Okay, not what I was expecting, but much loved anyway. And
but no, the episodes are good. The episodes are great, and you should keep going like normal.
Aw, I love her. Isn't she great, everyone? But today's episode, let's get into the topic proper. Now, for anyone who's ever wanted to start their own campaign, I am going to say this right now. It's not hard, but there is a lot that will go into it. You have to understand that you are not just building a story. You're building a world that is involving people that are putting their own time and creativity into it to make it unique. Now,
the best way that it can be described is you are writing a story, but you have an unknown number of co-authors, and you have no idea what they're going to put into it.
Creationism.
You're essentially attempting to write a story, but every few minutes a gang of monkeys comes in and starts banging on your typewriter, and you just have to kind of go with it. There's not much you can really do.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, we are all of varying different levels of D&D knowledge. I would think that between the three of us, those who've actually DM'd campaigns, me, Remy, and Chitter, we've all created some unique worlds and some unique stories. But, and this is the part that a lot of people are going to probably wonder about, is how do we get started with that? Well, some people would say that you have to start the story immediately. Have to have the plot line, the big bad guy, everything already planned out, and then you build the world around it. I would say that is probably one of the worst ideas to forming a campaign. Because you can have a story. Anyone can write a story. No one is immune to that ability. But you have to write a story that makes sense. And to start with that, you need to pick what world or what setting your story is going to be set in. Are we talking high fantasy, low magic, like Game of Thrones level, where it's primarily more hand-to-hand fighting? Stuff like that.
Cyberpunk,
Talking about space campaigns, dark fantasy, eldritch.
Exactly. Hi, demons and angels, or something like that. Those are all things that we start with, and then we evolve the story around it. Now, if you're just starting out, I think the best way I can describe it is this: when I was making, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, folks, and I'm just going to explain my work process. And then I'm going to let it open up to Chitter, and then I'm going to open up to Remy to explain their work process, because no DM is going to make something entirely the same as another DM, unless you're like very close to one another and you work like tit for tat working together on something. But when I made the campaign we're in right now, Lost and Found in Ravnica, I am a huge Magic the Gathering nut. So I knew how to incorporate the lore of everything around there, but Ravnica was not like the only setting I wanted. I wanted that campaign to be a love letter to a game that I have played since I was about 16. And I'm 33 now. So if you can tell, that's almost 20 years of playing that game. And I'm severely saddened by it. But I knew the lore. But I knew the lore. And when you have a setting that you are familiar with, it can create something I think a lot of people would have a lot more. I don't want to say the word comfortability, because that's not a word. I want to say they're just more comfortable when it comes to creating a story. So my first,
I don't want to say this word because it's not a word. So, anyways,
but my
Fuck the
point,
grammar police, but
fuck the grammar police, they suck. Anyway, okay, but my point is, I would say this, like, if all of us could give one rule to how we would make a campaign, my rule would be this: when you're creating a setting, make it a setting that you can build off of based on what you have an interest in. It's a simple rule, pretty basic, but it's like, for example, I knew Magic the Gathering. I knew how to incorporate the different realms. I knew how to. But yes, no. That's where I would say, like, for me personally, it's when you make a campaign that focuses on a world that you have some knowledge on. It doesn't have to be a lot of knowledge, but just have something that you're a little familiar with and you know the tropes of. That would be like rule one for me. Remy, since you're the special co-star this episode, why don't you tell us like what one of your rules is for making a setting for a campaign?
making a setting for rule, theme has to be something really considered whenever you're laying the groundwork. The themes can be, because a theme can work with a lot of settings, but you have to make sure there's not a tonal conflict between the two of them. Theme would be something like the idea of maybe like what the characters are going to go through. Is it going to be the idea of forgiveness? Is it going to be the idea of I'm trying to think of some good examples, like the idea of change, or what's going to be the main overarching plot really is what emotions do you want to convey? Now, that's going to be like very, very early in the writing process, but the best tip I can give is just do it. Like, don't overthink it. You don't need everything perfect for a setting. Get a good setting, get your feet grounded, get your feet wet, and then just push into it, because you are not going to have a good first campaign. I'm going to tell you that right now. You are never going to have a good first setting, a good first campaign, unless you're already very proficient at writing and storytelling. But even then, there are going to be a lot of hurdles you're going to be overcoming with the players that you aren't going to expect. It's going to be, to DM good is something you kind of have to learn. You can read all you want from the Dungeon Master's rulebook, but you're going to have to figure out your players. You're going to have to figure out how you want to do it, because there is only really one rule in Dungeons and Dragons. You can throw the entire Dungeon Master book out the window. The one rule is to make sure everyone has fun. So just jump into it. Just like get what you need set up. Don't sit down and name every single rock and getting, like every single little detail perfect. Make that shit up as you go. Like, You don't have to have it ready.
That's
That'd probably be my biggest rule.
That's a good rule. I like that rule because you do raise a lot of good points. Thematically speaking, we'll get into that a little bit later in the episode, but you have to understand that even though you are making a world, it's like that at the end of the day it can either be really small and compact and feel very personal, or it can be very massive and world spanning, and you would need a lot of information on how to build that world to your audience. Like thematic wise, just because you have that all planned out, it doesn't mean that that's gonna eventually pan out. Because I know for a fact, like there have been plot lines and story elements that I've added in previous campaign, and then they were just lost because of how the story went. But I was happy with like how most of that came out. Um, Chitter, what's your like? You're the more thematic of the two of us, so I want to hear what you have to say when it comes to how you would make a thematic setting for a campaign. What's your one rule?
Okay. So I just want to start off by saying this, first of all, before we get to my rule, is for first time DMs, and this is coming from very, very personal experience. Don't do a very big campaign right off the bat. Do a dungeon run. Like, do something that's pre-made. It doesn't matter. It's simple. It'll get your feet wet into how you're doing it, and the mistakes can be like rectified with the book, or if something goes wrong, worst case scenario, you can blame it on the book, and you don't feel like utter garbage. That's just me throwing that out there right there before getting to my rule really quickly. I just wanted to throw that out there because everyone's been talking about like, hey, make sure to not stick to too much and make sure to like be thematic and whatnot. Please, for the love of all that is holy, when you go to your first campaign, do something that is at your skill level. I made that mistake. I tried to do the Rhyme with the Frost Maiden campaign as my first big one. It starts in like 12 different towns, and I had to have all 12 ready to go because I didn't ask my players which town they wanted to start in, and I overworked myself, and we got stuck on an avalanche roll that I wasn't prepared for, and we never went back to it.
Amen. Always, before you can dig a ditch, you have to break ground. Don't be ambitious.
True.
Yeah. But my rule that when it comes to D&D, and I learned this by cutting my teeth on the Frost Maiden, and if you run this campaign, you will too. Don't get attached to an idea. Me and Garson have talked about, even as a player, Garson, please don't insult me when it comes to this,
I
because
wasn't
I
planning.
know it's a lot.
I wasn't planning on it, but I do want to hear where this goes next.
Yes. I have talked with Garson about a variety of different things regarding even my own character. And I have just thrown shit at the wall, see what's stuck, bouncing it off the DM. And that is how I play a character. Because I will go like, hey, I thought of this idea. Hey, I thought of this idea. And I will judge my character's growth based on their reaction on how to start a session. And sometimes that gets a little annoying. Yeah, a lot of little things scattered around throughout the map. My own world, Ishtodora, has like 20 different islands, and they each have like 10 different things that you can get attached to. And the thing is that even though I said don't make it a lot of things, each of them is very, very surface level. And the way that I go basically is I make the setting, and then afterwards I give it to the players and see what catches their interest. Because what I find interesting about a setting and what my players find interesting about a setting is going to be vastly different. So when I make surface level things, I'm never attached to any one of them. I have this theme. What hooks do the players find exciting? What can I lure a character into? Because as a DM personally, when it comes to a setting, the setting is always the background for me. It's always a focus on the characters, and I know we're focusing on the setting, but I need to bring this up because the setting is the hook in the Velcro for the characters. If you don't have if you get way too attached to an idea and no one hooks onto it, good fucking luck bringing that in because you are not getting it. And so that's why I like to have all these little hooks around and see which hook catches a player. Because if it's all one hook, I focus in on it. If it's multiple hooks and multiple people like multiple different things around a world, cool. We're going on a world tour then. Why go on a world tour if everyone is interested in one place, and why stay in one place if everyone wants to go around the world?
So that's actually a good view on it, Chitter, because I think you did hit a topic I think a lot of new dungeon masters have, and it's a very bad habit, and that is they always want to make their world like the Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones. What I'm saying is they want to make it this high concept setting, but they don't actively have the experience to make that I would say they don't have the experience to make that really something that's going to come out of the gate. So and you're right. Maybe it would be better if when they make a story, to focus primarily on what can draw in your players, because at the end of the day, you can make the story as much as you want, but the players are going to be the ones that bring it to life. You can't ignore their request or their input when it comes to the story. Now, you can't tell them everything, obviously, but you should give them something that draws them into it. That much is for certain. So I think you had a good point. Remy, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, not particularly. For a setting, though, one thing I do like to do is it kind of hits on the same way that Chitter was expressing, but in a slightly different way. I like to come to my players beforehand and figure out how to get them hooked. I like a good one-on-one session zero because I want to help develop that character's motive and keep the player interested in where it is going to go. Like, I will sit down with each individual one and I'll run a small introductory campaign with them, maybe no more than an hour, but just something of this is where you're starting, kind of get a feeling for their character. They can get a feeling for the setting at the same time. And I can kind of help and mold the story because half the time my story is written around the characters because I really love telling personal character stories. And that's why I like to I will have like 80% of the campaign done. But then I'll wait for the characters to come along and then I'll fill in that last 20% with things they like, with how they kind of view the world as well. So that way their characters fit in more naturally. They kind of flow with it better. And then with that little session zero, you give them, their own little place that they can start. Maybe it's their home with their family. Maybe they're running away from a burning town, but that will help kind of give them not an incentive, but like, I guess kind of an incentive, but give them kind of a plot to follow. Kind of give them their own personal reasons for going on this adventure.
Yeah.
And then that also helps me whenever I'm starting out, so I can just avoid oh, you all meet up in a bar and there's the one creepy dude in the corner. No, they're all coming into the same town from different angles for different reasons. They're all doing their own things and they just happen to kind of line up in the same what they want to achieve.
Yeah.
So, so, so go ahead, Chitter.
I just want to bounce off. I just want to. Yeah, I just kind of want to bounce off of Remy's idea a little bit there, because I do something very similar. I do a heroic chronicle with my players because that's just something established. It's something that they can look up as well and follow along. And I kind of like having that bond with the players where they're like, here's the tool that I'm using to make the character. If there's something that you don't like in it, you have the ability to come in and say, hey, I don't want to do that part, or I want to add this to my story, which I'm like, that's cool. We're both on the same page. I can see what you're wanting to change. And that way I just kind of come in to it with the character being like, okay, you have some stuff that it again comes down to all those hooks, because I kind of like to spread it wide. There will be stuff in the Heroic Chronicle that we never touch in a million years. We will never do it. But but if that hook draws their attention, then I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't have an idea around that. Where can that go? And then I have a hook to follow, to lead if I run out of ideas. Or I could hook it in naturally. But if I'm all completely out of ideas, like I am having the week from hell, and I got nothing, I can look at my players and go, what the fuck I have to do? I just find that very interesting. I find it very fun. I love using a setting to just hook in the players because sure, at the beginning, your players will all have their story fresh in their mind. They'll all be like, I'm ready to play this character. I'm ready. And you as a DM, you're like, I'm ready. But then 10, 20 sessions down the last 10, 20 weeks maybe, they've started to forget plot hooks. They've started to forget little details about their character. But you as the DM, you can bring that right back in, and the look and shock when you pull back a plot hook that they forgot about is sheer gold because they have the look of, oh my god, you remembered, and then it's like, oh god, I have to deal with this thing, and the setting hooks around it so naturally, and it's beautiful. I can't tell you the amount of times I've done that where I've had a player who maybe wasn't doing too much like for a few sessions, and then was like, and I could tell that they were not bored but like looking for something to do, and I'm like, hey, what are you thinking about right now? And they'll be like, well, I'm thinking about X, Y, Z, and I'll go, yeah, but what about B? And they're like, wait, you remembered? Like, yep, hook. Like, wait, I have to deal with that now?
I can think of so many times in which I've taken down a small note on something that a player mentions, and then we'll be like 10 sessions, 20 sessions in, and I'll be like pulling it back out. And then you see that moment of like that slight moment of hesitation of them trying to remember, and then it coming right back to them. And they're just like, oh no.
So,
And you can do that as well with consequences as well. Like
Mhm.
if they do something dumb, let them forget about it for a little bit, and then have the consequences rear their ugly head again.
Yeah, Garson did that with the Eldrazi and Navi.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm glad that I have you two on this episode because if it was just me, um, this would not be how the conversation would go. I am without a doubt one of the weirdest DMs to ever make a campaign because, to give you an example, 90% of the stuff that we have in the campaign that has happened to this point, I've made up on the spot.
Oh, improv is a DM's toolkit. You need to be able
You
to improvise.
have
You
to.
need to
Well,
like Garson.
Mhm.
I know that you say that it's weird that you've done 90% improv, but here's the thing. Here's what I have to say about that, just really quickly. And I know you brought up what the campaign is, and for anyone who hasn't watched the Lost in Ravnica series, it is a plane shifting, time traveling nonsense campaign, and it's amazing. But the thing is that you're not going to find that in a source book. You need to be able to improvise. Ravnica alone is has a very, very distinct point in when that book is focusing on, and it is before the Phyrexians, but after the War of the Spark. So the thing is that you're going beyond the Phyrexians. You're pulling from wikis, you're pulling from cards, you're pulling from supplementals on DM's Guild. If you're doing that, please tell me you're doing that. Um, the thing is that you have so much information that's just being pulled from all these different situations that improv the 90%, I'm genuinely surprised it's not higher because improv is not just a cool little trick at that point. It is the fundamental basis of the campaign. Everything in the campaign, if you had said was improv, would not surprise me in the slightest.
So here's what I'm trying to say, and this is for new DMs as well who are making their campaign. This kind of ties into setting, but we're gonna go into this a little bit more when we cover story in about 2 weeks. But the point is that with improv, you have to know exactly, like, it's a snap thought, it's a snap decision, it's a snap reaction. If you are someone who may need to write more stuff down to have a plot point, don't feel bad about that, because that's probably going to be a way that you can turn that around and make a campaign that's wholly unique to yourself. So if you are hearing these things and you're going like, I don't have that reaction time, that's fine. There's no way not to, there's no reason you can't be a DM and tell your story. But for me, I do improv so quickly because my brain is like constantly on active that it never shuts up. And I also work and I also work like 9 to 5 every day, so like I'm working in an office and I have nothing else to do besides my job, which is like maybe, yeah. My point is that if you let your mind wander a little bit, you can turn a normal setting into something that's wholly unique. And that leads me to the next topic I want to talk about is inspiration for a campaign. Yeah, so inspiration for a campaign setting. There's a fantastic book I've read called Stealing Like an Artist. Essentially, what it basically boils down to is that everything has been done in one form of another. So if you feel like your story is being a copy of something, or if it's being, you're taking it from a source book or a campaign book, and you don't know how to really make it your own, think of it like this. What's a story that you saw that lingered with you? It didn't have to inspire you. It didn't have to like be a life-changing event, just something that stuck with you. For example, with me, the anime Monster, that was a fantastic character piece of anime, but I wouldn't consider it one of the it's a great anime, don't get me wrong, and it's probably in my top 5, but not everyone's gonna take the same inspiration from me on that. When I wrote my big bad guy, the Toy Maker, I took inspiration from Johan, who's the main villain of Monster, because Johan has this charismatic way to manipulate people into doing things that are just downright evil. Like, one of the prime examples of it in that anime is he gives a recovering alcoholic a bottle of whiskey, and he makes him drink it on top of a building. The guy gets so drunk, he falls off and kills himself, unintentionally. So to have that master manipulator status is a great character trait to have in your bad guy. But when it comes to inspiration can come from any source. It's not limited to like the books. It's not limited to high fantasy. You can make a character and have a setting. I'm not committing to that one, but my point is that you can take inspiration from anything and turn it into something wholly unique if you know how to like change it. And I think when it comes to that, that for setting, that's where the key part of setting comes in, is inspiration. Remy, I know you focus a lot on getting inspiration for your stories because that's what we talked about on your show. Why don't you tell me like what you think of as a good source of inspiration for you personally?
Why don't you take a look at the stream, take a look at that top left-hand corner where it says professional thief? Do that. Be a fucking rat. Steal ideas from any favorite medium that you have. One, kind of going around to the idea that you had of the story that stuck with you. One story that stuck with me, and it's something that isn't particularly like the most famous. It's not well known for its story. The original Star Wars Battlefront 2 from like 2005 on the Xbox and the PlayStation 2, it had a campaign mode. It was literally added on because George Lucas said there needed to be a campaign mode. He walked into the development office, looked at what was going on, and he's like, yeah, it's good. Has it got a story? And they're like, I guess we got to add a story. The campaign follows from the perspective of the 501st, which was a clone unit that was under Anakin during the Clone Wars and then became basically Darth Vader's personal army during the Imperial saga. But it was all told from their perspective. So you saw this shift from the Republic to the Empire And from their perspective, when you watch the movies, it's just, oh yeah, they're the stormtroopers, they're the bad guys, they're the ones doing evil stuff. And then you watch it from their perspective, you see them feel guilty when Aya Sakura called them the bravest men she had ever met. And they couldn't even look her in the eyes because they knew that they had orders at some point they were going to have to enter. And there's kind of like that, kind almost like an emotional pull from them saying it's a good thing we were all wearing our helmets because none of us could dare look her in the eyes when she said that. And you see these characters who are in the movies, the villains, and you just see they're just doing their jobs. I mean, this is why they were made, this is what they were trained to do. To them, they're not evil, they're not good, they're just doing what they were always told to do. And that's kind of a story and a setting that really kind of threw the entire universe into perspective for me. That kind of really changed how you just look at those like mindless grunts in movies and games, and you're like, no, these people have thoughts, and maybe they don't like particularly what they're doing, but it's all they know. But that was a story that stuck with me, and it's kind of why I enjoy the idea of changing perspectives. Of you can have a story written one way, but then maybe instead of being the story of the heroes going to slay the dragon, what about the story of the heroes who come behind those heroes and now have to deal with the rampant bear problem because the dragon was eating up all bears or something? Coming in behind the hero and having to clean up their mess that they created.
I like that. I like that idea. It's like the dragon was eating all the bears, and now there's just nothing but bears. And then you find the one, and then if you want to take it a little bit even sillier, if you wanted to, like, let's say someone rolled a nat 20 on investigation or a nat 1, and then you just accidentally may or may not add Yogi Bear in there. It has a Feywild, it's an Archfey bear who wandered in. It's like, hey, boo boo, we're here to take over the village and take all the picnic baskets. You could do that. I don't recommend it. But if you wanted to add like some comedy in there, that's a possibility.
Dungeon Master, is there a bear in a bow tie and a vest? I don't know. Roll me a luck check. Nat 20. Let me just get my Yogi impression ready.
Chitter, same question to you. What was the story that inspired you on a campaign that you were working on for the setting?
Oh, it was okay, this is going to sound really silly, but it was a combination of stories that really drew me in. And it was also a combination of not only the stories, but the setting at the time. The initial concepts for stuff that drew me in was a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And not like the cards and whatnot, but like the spirits that accompanied the main character. I always found that so fascinating because the thing is that sure, everyone talks about like, oh, Yami and oh, like Astra was bad or Astra was okay. He was actually an amazing character. But then there's like what's the motorcycle guy's name? Yusei. Yusei was kind of cool, but no one seems to really remember that those spirits had their own thoughts, emotions, and goals, and they were so far beyond what the main character had as a perspective. And I find that so fascinating for me. I love the idea of the Eldritch. That kind of tones into like the Spider-Man games where it starts out like really small where you're stopping like a mugging or whatnot. And then it eventually turns into, oh, I'm actually going against an international crime organization, an international mercenary organization, and my professor who has arms now. So that that kind of expansion is so much fun, but also something that always hit me with these characters, and it's why I love the College of Spirits bard. It's why I love the Great Old One as a warlock. It's especially why I love the Aberrant One as a sorcerer, because leaning into what Remy was saying about the heroes after the heroes, what about the collateral damage? What about the ones you couldn't save? What happens with them? What happens with them when they try to fix things or they gain an extra dose of power? they're not going to be goody-goody two-shoes. They're going to be different. They're going to be aberrant. They're going to be terrifying. They're going to make you think things in a different way. Like, for example, in the current campaign that we're running, my character is partially Phyrexianized because they got abandoned by their family, and the people and the heroes during the Phyrexian War couldn't save them. What happens to someone like that? What happens when a victim decides to stop being a victim slowly but surely over time? And maybe they need some help from someone to guide them. Maybe they need someone to take their damn leash, for fuck's sake, if they really need the help. But I find those character concepts very interesting because the character is the focus, but their growth is not dictated by themselves. It's a very outside look of growth, and it forces you as both a DM and a player, depending on which side of the coin you're on, to look at that kind of character in a unique way where you might not you might find some character concepts with it to be weird, or they might not make sense in the moment, but then you connect it later on with something that the spirit had or something that the damage did, and you bring it back around, and it's in a very obtuse kind of way. And I just personally, I love stories like that. I love making characters like that. I love being able to take an idea, just corrupt the hell out of it, and then throw that character back in and say, you're surrounded by people who are good, who expect things of you, and you can't do it quite the way that they expect. How are you going to fix that?
So we should dive into that more when we get to character stories, which we're gonna be like I said, it's not gonna be next week. Next week we're gonna be talking about campaign stories, and then part 3 of this series will be about characters. And so that's gonna be where we're gonna go into more detail on that. But what you said actually does touch a good topic. You have a setting where maybe you aren't necessarily maybe you have a party that's not necessarily the good guys, but they're not the bad guys either. They're kind of like, for lack of a better word, they might be like the Guardians of the Galaxy, where they do a little bad, do a little good, but at the end of the day, they're, maybe not the most up-to-date people, but they're probably going to do the right thing at the end of the time. Or you're probably going to make a party full of bastards. It's a possibility. Setting-wise, though, you need to understand that when you have a party like that, because your party composition can have an impact on the setting, because let's be fair here, if you're playing lawful evil characters and you're basically roaming around a city that's protected by paladins, that could have an impact on how the setting goes, because maybe there's not a lot of whole evil characters around. Do you think that would probably be like something that maybe you should consider when you're making a setting, is like what kind of characters your players might want to have?
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that you have to take into consideration, what your players love to play. Because the thing is that you can have the most absolutely amazing world ever, and then you get a bunch of murder hobos. And you're like, fuck me. Okay, we're going to have to change this a little bit. And that is the worst feeling in the world, when you made the world perfectly, and then you go, fuck, I have to change it. So, again, it comes down to, as I've been saying, just throw hooks down to your players, see what catches their attention. Because if you know what's in the setting will catch your players' attention, then you can go to your players afterwards and go, hey, so theoretically, if something like this were to happen, how would your player react? And of course, not giving away the ghost of what's going to happen, but maybe throwing in the plot hook to get them in. How would they react? How could you draw them in? And then you go, okay, so they would react like this. Like, for example, with Waver. Oh my god, Waver. You're drawing him into the world by Inventor's Fair. Or with Keza, you're drawing her into the world with spirits and like Innistrad and whatnot. Like you're using the multiversal world in two completely different ways. And you're having and if Waver was tried to be drawn in with Innistrad, it wouldn't work. Same as with Keza into Kaladesh. It wouldn't work because the players aren't interested. The characters clearly have no interest. So your hook line's flat.
So, Remy, what is your take on that? Building a setting, if you know your party. What do you think about that?
If you know your party, if these are people that you've played with a good amount already, then you kind of already have an instinct of how they're going to be, if they're going to lean more chaotic, if they're going to lean more evil. But also, you should, as a dungeon master, kind of communicate to the player a little bit as well. Hey, this setting is going to be a little bit more like this. Like, as the dungeon master, you do have the obligation to make a setting the players will like, but they are also actors in this play you're putting on. They have to also understand, okay, this is kind of the vibe that we're going for. Like, if I'm going to I've ran one that I particularly love that's a mafia themed campaign. It's sort of a low magic, the setting of like 1930s actual normal setting, but then there's all this magic going on in the background people don't like. And I will tell people, this is a mafia campaign. You are mobsters. You can't really be the good guys in this because, I mean, inherently, you are very self-interested, violent criminals. So
Yeah,
the players
you're
should
not going to see like a paladin in there.
no, and if it's going to be a paladin, it's probably going to be like a broken oath paladin. It's going to be, that kind of, maybe they could look for some sort of redemption in a weird, messed up way, but you kind of have to give your players, this is going to be kind of the setting, so that way when they're making their characters, they can be a little bit more knowledgeable of how the character fits into the world and how the world fits around the character. If you don't know what your players are like, since we're doing the whole if you're setting up a campaign kind of angle, if this is your first time running one, have it just as blank as it can be. Just have it blank, have a little starting town area, give the players some freedom, let them run around, set out some hooks, kind of like Chitter said. But use that time to just get a feeling of what they're going to be like. And then once you've gotten that figured out, you're like, okay, I know what angle I got to pitch this from. I've given them some time. They found the hooks they like. I know where I can take this. If it's your first time, milk toast is perfectly fine.
I think that's
Just
a good way to look at it.
Set it down, make it a plain piece of paper, let them draw a little bit, and then start seeing, okay, that's what they're drawing. That's like the art that is being made. Lean into it then.
If I may, Garson,
Uh-huh.
I love what Remy said there about just making it as milquetoast as possible. Give them a basic scenario that is completely morally neutral. Like, say, for example, like a cart being robbed, or needing to stop a bar fight, or like or someone being robbed, or like something very low stakes, but also morally neutral that can have different outcomes depending on what the players take. Because depending on that outcome that everyone takes, you're going to find out the morality of your players' characters very quickly.
That's a good point. I mean, a lot of people would say that the alignment chart is how your character is supposed to play, and they are right to an extent, but sometimes, like, there is a chance that their character is going to break that alignment chart, and it's just going to shock you when that happens. And you can't really have a setting, and it's hard to have a setting perfectly prepared for that scenario, I guess would be the best way to describe it. But
Can I be perfectly honest? Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
I hate the alignment chart. I thoroughly hate the alignment chart. Do not put me in one of 9 boxes.
You know what? I gotta be honest, Remy. I feel the same way. I don't hate the alignment chart, but to me, the alignment chart is, if we are not sticking to this, why do we have it?
like nobody perfectly fits in any box. Everybody's going to be straddling some line and then be in different like certain. It's like the 4-panel quadrant makes a lot more sense for like setting up morality because it's just a big plane and you're like, oh, I'm roughly there. The alignment chart is just too rigid for actual people.
Yeah, here's the thing. Here's the thing that I would say for the alignment chart is it is a great starting point. However, as the campaign goes on, if you are a more experienced DM or if you're a new DM and you're bringing in items that have alignment, like let's say for example a new DM randomly rolls on a table that has the deck of many things. You think
Oh, we're
I'm
gonna
going
we're gonna get into that. I'm gonna love it when
I'm
we
go-
talk about that one in our top 5 magical items episode.
yeah. But I have a reason for bringing that up. There is an item that switches your alignment. Like it just flat out does. And if you're neutral, it does nothing. For a character that starts out as like lawful good and then does a few chaotic or maybe even a couple evil things, like let's say a character does that, I would have it be that you would then have to debate with your DM for what your new alignment is so that the shift can happen or not happen. Because an alignment is something that is constantly changing. But when it comes to certain items, especially if the DM wants to include it or the player has an interest in it, you kind of have to roll with it. Because sure, we may not like how it works. I'm personally neutral about it. But the thing is that there are items in there that are really cool that function off of it. So it comes down to how do you make those work within the setting? Because if there's no alignment, well, then what about an item that requires you to be good? How do you define that? Do you define that by the character's actions, by how they talk with the deity above? Like, what what defines a good character? What defines an evil character? And what defines a neutral character is baked into the setting. It has to be baked into the setting because that in of itself dictates how the characters are going to be perceived, how the characters are going to act, and how NPCs are going to act. So, again, we may not like the alignment chart, but coming back to the setting, if if someone is seen as good or seen as fitting into the society by like being tough, taking things, beating someone up as in a strength contest, and what is the definition of too far? Like again, those are small details, and if they come up, they're relevant, and if they don't focus on them. But those are all details where the alignment chart kind of gives you a reference point where you can go, okay, this town is more to aligning towards evil. This character grew up here, and if they were and if the player's going, well, I kind of lean more towards the good, oh well, then they were more of an outcast, they were more of this. And again, I know that the alignment chart isn't perfect, but it's a reference point.
Might have to be a point where I disagree with you there because I am not going to throw any items that would change a character's alignment into the campaign because that would kind of be an affront to their character and how they want to navigate it. I can understand kind of keeping lawful concepts for paladins because paladins being very lawful by nature, but they more have a code to uphold. So long as they don't, break the code, then they don't have to worry too much about having an alignment chart for them. Though I will say I agree with the perspective of good is very much perspective based on where you are. Like you could have a town where like it's considered a good thing or like a lawful thing that if you catch a thief, you let's go old biblical, let's say you stone them to death. And that's considered good in that town or that part of a country, or say that country in general. But you could have someone who walks in who's very vehemently opposed to murder, and they say, well, that's not a good alignment thing because that's still murdering someone. Sure, they weren't doing something great, but murder is a worse crime than thievery. So morality is all very perspective. You know, the villain always thinks they're the good guy in their own story. So it's kind of, when it's something as soft as, well, not soft, but like not as tangible as morality, I really wouldn't want to incorporate anything that would change a player's morality, unless it's something like possession. Like the item possesses them for some time until they're either separated from it or until they pass some kind of save, or there's like a like you have to use, I'm trying to think of a good healing spell, like
Remove
the spell.
curse.
Yeah, remove curse.
Greater
there
Restoration
was
probably would be a good example.
Greater Restoration. Yeah, that'd be a good example. I don't really want to mess with the players in that kind of way because they decide how their character reacts to things. And maybe even if they are, say, a lawful good, there may be things they don't completely agree with that everyone considers good. It's a very kind of tightrope to walk. I can see using the not the compass, not the moral compass, using the, I'm just lost all my train of thought, using the alignment chart as kind of like a reference for where characters would sit in a setting. I definitely can see that. But also, like, from town to town, it's going to change completely. So it's kind of hard to have an alignment chart because, you know, what's lawful and what's good has changed over centuries upon centuries. So maybe in one setting, an idea may be good, that same idea in a different setting would be bad. It's all very dependent upon kind of the setting too.
So I think that's pretty much a good way to view it, is that there's, when it comes to the setting of starting your campaign, there is a lot of nuance to it. There's not like a real right way to get the setting, and I would say, like, after everything we've talked about, it's clear that what we're trying to do is we're building a framework. It's like if you're building a house, you gotta have a frame. You gotta have the blueprints. That would be the setting. Then you build the framework, which would be the story. Then you add in all the fixtures that be the characters, and then down the road you would eventually finish up, and it'd be a little location. That'd be when the campaign officially starts. Settings are probably the hardest thing to get started on, but there are ways that you can do it, and I actually want to showcase a few tools for newer DMs who maybe they don't necessarily know how to do like their setting initially, but this would help them at least get some tools that they wanted to work on. And then I also wanted to bring in you guys, like how you guys would set up your own settings to that as well. But let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the stuff. We all basically brought a little something to today's episode to showcase for newer players. And I'm going to start off with the first thing, and this part's probably going to piss a lot of people off, but I figured I'd mention this. Let's start with the OG, the official source books, D&D Beyond. And as you can tell, there's a lot here. And also, I'm going to share my screen with you guys in chat, because I don't think you guys can actually see what I'm looking at. There we go. There you go. That way you can take a look at this too. So these are all the official source books. If you are a brand new DM, we really recommend reading not just the source books, but also reading some of the adventure books themselves, because there are some really good ones. I think we can establish that one of the best settings that have come out of the last 10 years of D&D has been Curse of Strahd, and then Tales from the Yawning Portal, because, or even stuff like all of these ones have been pretty good in my opinion. But
I will say this.
Mm-hmm.
The older source books are pretty good, but the newer ones, you do need to add stuff to them to make them usable.
Yeah, like for example, I did not like the 2025 rule set, and there's just not a lot here. But for example, if you were making a space-based campaign, obviously you would want to look up Spelljammer. But if you look at just the content of Spelljammer, there is a lot to take in.
Oh yeah.
Spelljammer is probably one of the worst books to get started on if you're a brand new DM. It's just too advanced. I would but stuff like, for example, Curse of Strahd, that is a great entry level campaign in my opinion. I don't think anyone can dispute that this one campaign would give you probably a realistic Gothic world. You would feel it would be interesting to see what happened. It's planned out. You know everything. It gives you the maps. It gives you the characters. It gives you the encounters. I think this would probably be like, if you are just starting out and you have never DM'd before, do this book and then take notes about how they have it structured. There is some obviously not perfect things about it. It's not a perfect book, but it's probably the best way to get started, in my opinion, just to have something like that play around with.
If I may,
Mhm.
actually, one of the ones that I would particularly recommend for a new DM to start out with is actually Tyranny of Dragons.
Journey of Dragons is a fantastic campaign. I definitely agree here.
Because the thing is that it's actually 2 campaigns in one, but you start out with Horde of the Dragon Queen. That's a relatively lower stakes campaign than Curse of Strahd in the grand scheme of things. And not saying that Curse of Strahd is bad, it's iconic for a reason. But for a first time DM, if you want to say, hey, let's play Dungeons and Dragons, you guys, let's go do a dragon campaign. Like if you want
Badass,
to you're bringing in a world, you're going to Forgotten Realms, which has a lot of information if you're the kind of DM that wants to look up stuff on the fly as well, and if not, you have enough in the book. And if after the campaign everyone's like, "Oh man, I want more," because most times first time DMs struggle with that. What do you do after the campaign's done? Then you can go right on to the Rise of Tiamat and go, "Guess what I got? I got bigger, better dragons for you to take on. Let's go."
So I never ran Tyranny of Dragons ever, so I've never played that
I
one.
have played Tyranny of Dragons. I have not ran Tyranny of Dragons, but I will say playing it is fantastic. But I think I definitely agree Curse of Strahd is not a good first time, because with Curse of Strahd, the name of the game is mood. It's tone and it's setting it, which can be really hard if it's your first time, because it's supposed to be unnerving, eerie. There's supposed to be this constant overwhelming pressure that Strahd can just pop up out of goddamn nowhere and just sit down at your campfire and have a conversation with you. He may be the final villain, but he is very present, and there's this constant mood and tension with it that's very hard to get right when you're doing it first time. Tyranny of Dragons is a really good campaign to start out with. I think another one that would be really good to start out with is the Dragon Heist.
Waterdeep?
It's small, Waterdeep, yep. It's
I shall
small, it's in one city.
Okay.
I eat.
I heard good things about Waterdeep. I think that's a pretty good one too. It does also feature one of the most iconic characters in the last 10 years of D&D. I would know Xanathar, but that one, he's pretty unique too.
That too, yeah.
The other thing is, and I don't like to necessarily draw comparisons between the two because they're two very different games, but because this is a Waterdeep setting, this would particularly be also something that people who maybe want to try out D&D from Baldur's Gate might want to give a check, because one of the main companions from Baldur's Gate 3 is Gale from Waterdeep. So maybe, and he does talk about it a lot. Like, it's in subtle talking, but it does make you want to check the city out. And this would probably be a good introduction to that setting as well, which can then be branched off into new additional stories that you've already established, because now you have ran this campaign and now you can homebrew maybe a unique setting.
Yeah, no, that's go ahead.
If I may, there is one other one that I do want to bring up that's actually newer, but is actually combined with something that new DMs would love to run. And that's actually the Shattered Obelisk, because it is an extension of the Lost Mind of Phandelver.
Yeah, I saw that actually. Ooh, I actually like, and
The-
obviously it's got goblins.
Yeah, The Lost Mind of Phandelver is literally an adventure designed for beginners. This is the extension campaign. The story is a bit simplistic in some ways, and for more experienced DMs may want to tinker with it. But for a new DM, going right out of the tutorial into a campaign, into a world that you already have established by the beginner book you have, that's amazing. That's
And
giving you the chance to not only have the world built and made, but you have the Lost Mind of Phandelver, a literal tutorial adventure that builds itself up, giving you hooks right off the bat to build a party with zero issue and going right into a full campaign. Everything we just talked about, getting your players involved and whatnot, just went down to the easiest level possible with that.
I think that, and these are all great examples. I do admit that, and this is, if I remember correctly, this was the original adventure module that came with the big red box, starter edition.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, no, that would be probably a good way to run it. And then, for more an intermediary take on setting, there is a couple I actually would recommend. They're not necessarily source official books, but it's actually from a series of interesting side content. Humblewood. So for those of you who have never played Humblewood before, allow me to explain. This is like D&D, but the setting is not dwarves and elves and tieflings. It's birds. But
And other wildlife.
yes, but mostly birds. If you want to get other wildlife, you have to get the Beyond the Canopy edition. But my point is that, yeah, this is like, these are, it takes that setting that we're familiar with, but it turns it into a setting that not everyone would probably, yeah, not everyone is pretty much excited. I mean, would be like, I cannot talk. Damn it. Okay.
It's a setting that is more like fine tuned,
Mhm.
whereas you can bring like normal stuff to the campaign, but you're also as the DM going to have to set restrictions on what your players can and cannot bring to the table, which is a great way of setting that because you have actual justification within the world. Sometimes with DMs who don't like to have certain things at the table, they can find it hard to justify beyond I don't like that. So saying, like, say for example, someone wanted to play a dwarf in Humblewood, that can't really work because you'd be focusing mainly on up high things and flying places, and dwarves can't really do that. So you'd be able to say like, "Oh, I don't think a dwarf would work," not because you don't like it, but because it doesn't work within the campaign and you can provide easier justification for it.
Right. Remy, what do you think about some of these setting books? Did you have any other ones that you wanted to also recommend?
We were obviously all wrong about all of them. Your first campaign should be Tomb of Annihilation.
No, Remy,
No
no,
bugs.
no,
Yes.
no,
Remy, yes.
no, Remy, no. I have no. That will no. That's the campaign you run for that one guy who won't leave you the fuck alone. That's what happens. I'm gonna do a crow. No, but for those of you who have never run Tomb of Annihilation, this is a Zarek. He's a
This
dick.
is the Dark Souls. It's the Dark Souls of campaign books. I'm gonna be real.
It's true. It's true, especially because it's actually a relatively short. Okay, it's not a short campaign by any means of any stretch of the words. What I mean is that it's it's only like a few chapters because the majority of the campaign itself is actually going into the Tomb of Annihilation, and there's like 6 levels, and each of them are like a full dungeon. So. Well,
There's a reason the dungeon masters have nicknamed this campaign the Meat Grinder.
Yes.
This chews up player characters like they're bubblegum.
If I may suggest maybe a lighter world, and this is something where yes, what I like is going to come into play heavily with this is actually the Taldore books. Because yes, it's Critical Role. Everyone knows that Critical Role is like maybe in some circles it's a little bit of a cheaper option. But the thing is that with the Taldore book, and especially with the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, but also more so with the Taldore book. I feel like I just flip-flopped there, but anyways, um this is a world that has been shown. If you're interested in this world, you know about Critical Role. You know about the lore because it's so easily accessible. And the subclasses that come into it are unique and fascinating. And you can really do some cringy OC stuff if you want, like, oh, I am the daughter of Keyleth and whatnot. I'm the forgotten son of the gunslinger himself. Like, sure, you could do cringy stuff like that, and that's totally fine. But the thing is that this setting, as silly as it is very well known. The lore is very easily accessible, and if you want to see how a campaign is run with it, it's not about like deciphering the clues within the text and whatnot. You can go search up Critical Role campaigns 1 to 3 and look up even the brief recaps to get an idea of how this world is run. You're not saying to be like Matt Mercer, no. But if you want to get the tone of it, if you want a quick tone of how Taldore is run, go watch a Critical Role episode. It's fun and silly, and that book is an entire world of that shit.
So I know we just wrapped this up, but but of course I have to go back to the one we just wrapped up for our last series of videos, which was Obojima, and that book is nothing but setting. It's 100% setting. Like if you want to see if you want to get an idea of how to build a world, I always would recommend Obojima. Now, it won't give you campaign story elements, at least not to the fact that you would be able to make a full campaign off of what it offers, but I would fight anyone in the street to say that it does not give you a really interesting setting for its world. I'm not going to go too much into it because we just wrapped up like a whole series of videos on it, and we're not making this the let Garson talks about Obojima for another 5 weeks show because that would just be boring as shit. But that's my viewpoint for setting. Remy, do you have like a book that you would recommend for people who want to like get a good setting feel for maybe a potential campaign that is not Tomb of Annihilation?
Gonna be perfectly honest with all of you. This is the Dungeon Master sin I'm going to admit, and a D&D sin I'm going to admit. I've never watched Critical Role,
Go to the
and
shame
I
corner.
have never ran a campaign off a book. Every single setting I've used, I have built by hand.
And that's good. I think that is a good way to look at it. I think, but for newer players, I don't recommend that. Just because, well, okay.
I don't recommend that. That's how I started, and my campaigns were not great starting out.
Well, okay, so that's
You basically decided to be like, hey, everyone is eating this really spicy shit, and I'm gonna go for the Carolina Reapers while everyone else is starting out on bell peppers, basically.
That I am awful at reading. Dyslexia is a pain in the ass for me whenever I'm reading very small text or very dense text. I am best just letting my dungeon master run, and then I just learn from him, and I would just see how he handled things, and I would take tips from him, and I would ask tips of him, and then I just kind of was like, okay, I want to do this, but I don't want to use a book because I was mainly a player at the time, so I didn't want to take a book that my dungeon master was then going to plan on running us through at a later point. Like most of the recommendations for books I'm giving are from the perspective of a player because I've never ran any of them, but I have been a player in them, so I can kind of give that different perspective of this is what I enjoyed of it, this is what I didn't enjoy of it. However, when I'm writing my own campaigns, I love full creative freedom. And that is the name of the game for me is I want to be able to mold and shape this world how I see fit. It is 15 times more work than using a standard book, but I also find it just more satisfying creatively for me.
And
And there's nothing
yeah, exactly.
there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Just for new DMs.
No, for new DMs, no. Go like find a small pre-made one shot or a lighter book to start in with. Do not do it yourself.
So
Do not make my mistake.
So here was where I made my mistake with my first campaign, and I wanted to share this with everyone because this is probably the best lesson I can teach everyone. So my first official campaign we started last year. It was called Stone Hearts. It was supposed to be a one-shot jokey campaign. I butchered that one. So essentially, it was supposed to be a playthrough of one of the most infamous adventure modules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons called Castle Greyhawk, which was nothing but a parody. It was meant to be a joke campaign. There wasn't stuff like there wasn't like gelatinous cubes. There were gelatinous discs. There was stuff like there was stuff like a food court level, which was nothing but like a big bakery. There was a dungeon land, which was like you go to Alice in Wonderland through the Castle Greyhawk portal, and then there was another version of Through the Looking Glass where you got to fight like the Jabberwocky and the Queen of Hearts, and it was just a big joke campaign. But around halfway through it, I introduced a concept that kind of broke it, and then I was like, I took it something completely different. And I think what I'm trying to get at here is just because you have an idea of how you want your story to go, you might honestly consider ending the campaign before you go and try to salvage that one. So what I mean by that is that there's no shame in saying, you know what, we tried this, it was fun while it lasted, but I don't have the heart to continue this setting and this story. I think it's just better to say, hey guys, listen, I love playing with you guys, you're fun. This setting is just kind of burnt me out. We need to start over with something new. And I think that once I did that and I started doing Lost and Found in Ravnica, I realized here's where I made a lot of mistakes, but now I'm more interested in making this story a little bit more because I still have my same players, but the setting allows me to tell a story that isn't me breaking the entirety of the campaign module, basically. So, yeah.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to wrap it up with one last sentence. So basically what I'm saying is that if a setting doesn't work for you, talk to your players and see what they can do about it and see if they're having a good time. But at the end of the day, don't feel too bad if you just end up deciding that you want to change the setting in the story, because sometimes the story comes to a natural conclusion.
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I fucked up.
Like, especially if you're just starting out, like, especially if they are new players. If they're new players, they may not be as lenient, but if you get like seasoned dungeon masters or seasoned players who join in with you, they're totally going to get it. Like, when you have people who have been the dungeon master and been through the shit grinder of a bad campaign, they're totally going to get it and be like, all right, can I recycle this character? I really like this character. Can I use it again? Like, that's probably going to be the reaction you're going to get.
And
But
going along those lines, what can be really interesting and what can be really revitalizing for you as a DM is if you get players saying, oh man, I really wanted to keep going because I had XYZ in mind. And then you go and realize, oh shit, that's an amazing idea. And the players revitalize you into being excited about your own campaign. It doesn't happen all the time. And I want to be very clear that Remy's thing and Garson's thing is the more likely reaction, and like recycling a character or everyone just being chill and wanting to move on. But if you get that moment of where you get really excited about your own campaign again because of your players, that that is like a feeling of rebirth.
that is a shot of adrenaline right into your creative capability, like
Mm-hmm.
into your excitement.
So, with that being said, this is where we would say most new players would start, would be to like maybe read some source books, look at this cover art, get some ideas from there. But what if you want to go Remy's path and you want to make a world all of your own? Well, I actually have some
Don't go
more
Remy's pass.
Remy's
Don't go
path.
Remy's path.
Remy's path. Well, if you did have Remy's path, I did want to recommend something else, and this is what I wanted to recommend. This is a quick little website that you've probably never really heard of, but if you have, great. This is called World Anvil. Now, I basically just started this up because why the hell not? But I wanted to basically show it to showcase what World Anvil is capable of. This is the all-in-one world generating tool. Because you can make an entire campaign setting with this alone. It's going to be very difficult, mind you, but it's possible. Because what World Anvil does is you can make maps, you can make articles, which will let you create like the world, like set up stuff for like how you want to have your world interact, set up the history of it, set up like the species, like you can actually create your own animals, what kind of vehicles are in there, what's the geography like, what kind of gods are in this world. Like it breaks it down in a way where it's like you have like countries and military and organizations and everything. And even like if you want to give your world something like diseases that are common around there, you can go that route. Now, we do not recommend this for new players at all. We don't. In fact, I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. Don't do this until you've run at least 3 successful campaigns, because this thing will don't. Because World Anvil allows you to build this world up and make a setting that is wholly your own with very intuitive tools. That being said, however, you will be spending at least 9 to 10 hours a day to make that happen. So I don't recommend it. But I do think that if you are interested in making, like, going down what Remy's path was, I do think that this would probably be a good idea. Because then you could, in theory, do everything through the website itself, and then you can contain it and then export it to something like D&D Beyond or Roll20. Or if you're doing it in live action, where you have people coming to your house to play the game, you can print the maps off. So it's something that you could potentially do.
Yeah, this is the full creative control that Remy was talking about. Do not do it if you are a first-time DM. Like, don't get me wrong. This is absolutely amazing micro detailing, but if you're a first-time DM, you're gonna get lost. You're gonna get lost in the sauce.
Right. So, and on top of that, it does have stuff like a built-in notebook. It lets you name their world. I made an account. I made something called Corinth, but I did not put anything in there because I don't think I could run this. I have no knowledge of how to build. This is like something Remy and Chitter could probably pull off more than I can, because Chitter writes like all of our scripts. It knows exactly how to make the words come out, and Remy has been doing this for a lot longer than I have, and I'm an idiot. So we have 2 professional people who know what they're doing, and a moron who doesn't. Professional in air quotes, but that's what.
Those are some big fucking air quotes. If they were any larger, they'd be blocking air traffic.
Pretty much.
They're the maximum size Microsoft Office allows.
They're the straight up. How big did it get? 120.
But let's say we don't want to go this route. Obviously, this is just too extreme for new players. There are some other lesser powerful options that we do want to recommend too. For example, Incarnate. This is something that Chitter recommended. I think this is a great idea. I just basically looking at it real quick. It's all-in-one map maker, but it actually does capture settings pretty well. This feels like a tropical island just by looking at it, and it feels warm and inviting, and maybe you make a campaign that's a little bit more sunny. Or maybe you go with the dark and dank dungeon mine like we have right here, but it gives that feeling of the setting that I think is pretty interesting. And of course, you have stuff like the world maps, which build the setting up, and I like this a lot. And stuff like, it's just stuff like all of this stuff. Like, just looking at this image alone, like, okay, let's zoom in a little bit. Like, just looking at this image alone, you have, like, the dwarf country, demons, elven, Lamian, human, and ancient continent. So you have this interconnected world, but everyone's on their own separate island, and they don't interact. What kind of story is available in that is wholly unique? Because,
yeah. If I may though, with Incarnate, there's something that you haven't been showing that I think it would be rather interesting to new DMs as well.
What's that?
The fact that you can do not just top down, but 3/4 view maps.
You can, and I love Incarni. This is my personal map making software here.
Ooh. I've never used this before, so I have no idea how to use it.
It
But
is literally drag and drop.
Ooh.
yeah. But the thing is that if you go to cities, like scroll down a little bit.
Mhm.
Like if you keep going through, you will find that there are like maybe they didn't include it for obvious reasons of just simplicity, but there are like 3D versions where you can get like a 3/4 view of the maps that you make, which, like, don't get me wrong, there is absolutely nothing wrong with a top-down view, especially for battles and whatnot. But if you're going into a city and you want to see the scale of it, oh, Fantasy World 2.0, that's what it's talking about. Scroll down a little bit. Keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling. Fantasy World 2.0.
It won't let me click on it for some reason. I don't think it's a link.
Yeah, whatever. Anyways, yeah, that's.
I'm gonna leave it on the GIF here to show how it works. I think that'd be kind of interesting for people to look at because that's some really effective software. I think that would actually be. This would probably be the best map making tool to have.
Yeah. Actually, I have a map personally that I'm going to just quickly pull up so that you guys can see what I'm talking about.
If only they can make good maps in the software. It's a great software. I'm just bad at making maps.
But it looks really intuitive. It looks like it's simple stuff like you can just drag it and make it here, and then it has like good overlays and stuff like that. I like the fact that it actually does go up to 8K resolution, which obviously not everyone's going to care about how something looks, but like, you know what, there is that in Cyberpunk. Me look now.
So here's one thing I really love about it. It's straightforward. It's like if you know how to use MS Paint and drag and drop, you can figure out this software. It is really easy to work with. It's really fun to work with. It's very streamlined and simplistic. But also, if you have a big world map and you kind of want to like perfectly mimic part of a coastline and then make a more zoomed in map, you can do that with this software. You just pick an area that you want to zoom in and turn into a separate map, and then it will just create a new map, and then you can start customizing it from there.
I like that. I
Yeah.
like that a lot.
So you don't have to sit there and meticulously remake a coastline or a lake or anything like that.
Yeah. Also, Garson, I did send you a link to the map that I made called Tally's Rest. It gives you a great view of the 3/4 angle that I was talking about.
Did you just send it to me in our DM? Yeah, you did. Okay, let me open up in real quick. Open link. So here's the one that Chitter just sent me. Oh yeah, no, that does look pretty nice. We just there we go. Now everyone can see it. No, but that looks pretty good. And it does feel like something like one of those classic Final Fantasy games that you get on the SNES. I think that would be great.
This is very much this is very much like this is a very small town community map that I made. I didn't want to go top-down view because it didn't need to be. There were no battles to be had. It was merely them stopping by and getting information, so a top-down view would not properly display how this town feels.
Right. Now, I do have a question for you two, since you guys are familiar with this program more than I am. I noticed it said try for free. What's the price to use it, though?
Or $5 a month.
Yeah. But the thing is that you can make up to 10 maps for free. And then if you still don't want to pay, you can just delete old maps, no problem, or just export them and then delete them and save them for later. But it is relatively affordable, and the stuff that you get from it is just extra assets, more maps. Like the overall usage of the program is not restricted. You just get extra.
I guess that makes sense.
I'm going to send
Go ahead, Ribby.
you a link to something I was working on where Chitter made a town here. I made something a little different. It's still a work in progress.
Let's
I
take a
sent
look.
you the link.
I'll open it up. Okay,
This is for the campaign that we're going to be writing on tonight.
Ooh.
This is one of the dungeons.
Is this for the Moonshine campaign?
This is for the Moonshine campaign.
Ooh, nice. For some
Old
reason,
Dwarvish ruins.
there we go. Okay. I can't like
Huh.
I can't make it smaller for some reason. It didn't want to open up that way, so I'm just gonna. Oh, okay. Never mind. I guess it wanted to work now. But my
Well, okay, there we go.
I guess, hey, you know what? Solution is it worked. That's the important part. Uh, but yeah, no, I like this, and you can tell that there's a lot of. It's small stuff, but the setting is there, and you can feel it by just looking at this map. I feel like if you were to play this kind of campaign with something like this, you would get the feeling of the setting, and it would definitely be like, it would come through even if you wouldn't initially be able to pick up on it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
I still love the stone face just looking up at you.
oh yeah, it captures so much there, and it's so amazing. Really quickly, I do want to share an additional map that I made. It kind of shows like how you can build ambience in the map, and it's from a place called Cocoa Crystals. It's the second link that I sent you, Garson.
All right, I'll reopen it.
The last part of this podcast is just going to be us sharing maps.
Well, I would say probably, but it would also be like we just want to showcase some tools for it. Okay, once again, a small technical difficulty. There we go. Okay, now we got it. But no, like, yeah, I've never heard of this program before, but it definitely seems like this is what a lot of people use to make those maps that you see on the map packs on Roll20, just from the looks of it. I've bought a few of them in the past when I needed, like, something quick, but this definitely seems like this is someone who had enough time and effort to make it into something wholly unique. Now there's something I want to show you guys real quick because I don't know if you want to see this. I actually had this website given to me by my brother Aru, and this is without a doubt one of the stupidest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. So this is the cave and glade generator from GitHub.
Oh, I know this one. Yeah.
So if I just keep hitting enter button, it just randomly generates a bunch of caves and glades.
You know what? That's useful because it gives. Because the thing is that with a randomizer, I find that you can find something that you have. They're like, oh, I don't really know what I want to do. Click, click, click. Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, for example,
God, and I can just see the. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, for example, something like the Scarlet Way here, which is pretty basic. It's a two-way entrance for a cave, but you could easily combine this with other maps to make it into like a big mega dungeon.
Yeah, like this alone, this Scarlet Way, I could see being like a fortress vault even.
I could see this being so useful whenever the players want to go off on a side adventure. Like, we're gonna go spelunking, and you're just like, you're just typing in websites. Yeah, here's the map. I was totally ready.
But yeah, so this is completely free. You don't have to pay anything for the cave and glade generator. I just wanted to recommend this because when it comes to having your setting, we're gonna go into this a little bit more next week with campaign setup and prep. But, you know, sometimes it wouldn't hurt to, like, maybe you hit the enter button 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Something like this pops up and you're like, okay, maybe I can work with this one. Or 11, 12. Okay, what happened here? Like, I don't know. It's a small thing, but something is pretty good to have. And since it is randomized, you never really know what you're going to get. I actually think you could, in theory, take a D20, roll it 5 or 6 times, write down the numbers, hit the enter button that many times, and take every map that comes up. You might be able to make something like a complete dungeon setting in just 5 minutes that way. Now, I don't recommend it, but it's possible.
Take Photoshop, link them in weird ways. You can easily make like a big map out of it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This actually leads into something that I did show Garson earlier, and it's something that's free and relatively simple. And I know it's going to be a little silly for this, but For your note taking, I have a few different options. For the very inexperienced newbies, look,
Mhm.
you don't need fancy shit right off the bat. Just use your Google Keep or Notepad. It takes
Oh yeah.
notes, it has reminders, it has labels for you. It's a basic software. You're gonna outgrow it, but at the start, you don't need much.
Right. Write down some ideas, write down some inspirations you might have, and just keep working at it. Eventually you will come up with a campaign setting, just even if it takes a little bit of time. Just always write stuff down.
Yeah. Moving on from that though,
Mhm.
there is one thing that I particularly use, and that is the second one, Garson, the lazy RPG campaign. And this one is free. The other ones are paid, but this one's free. And this is a template for GMs who like just want to keep notes about characters, want to keep notes about sessions, want to plan out stuff. It's very extensive, but it's also, as they say, very lazy. Because, and it's not lazy in a bad way. You basically go in, you get your shit, you go, which characters are going to be here, what's the major plot points, and then it has a section to take notes for every session, or you could expand it to add another character, just a whole bunch of different things.
And
This is very
yeah,
this is one that I've run campaigns on before, and I've come out with paragraphs of notes and recaps, and it's just held it for me.
hmm, I think that's a good way to look at it. And uh Remy, what do you recommend for just like writing down ideas for settings or like stuff? I know you typically are just like thinking old school with pen and paper, I'm guessing.
I am definitely an old school pen and paper kind of person, but Google Docs has just been straight up like my go-to now. I used to carry like these tiny little, I could get them at work on like an employee's discount, and they were these little notebooks that I would always like write down ideas while I'm at work. But now when I'm at work and I have an idea, I can just pull out my phone, go through my Google Docs, access the document here on my phone, type out a few ideas that I have that I want to add on later, come back home, get that same document opened up on my PC. I can work on it here. If you know how to use it and structure it, even the most basic tool like Google Docs, because I mean that's what this entire like campaign that I'm writing, the Moonshine campaign, that's all on Google Docs right now. I might take that into World Anvil later, so that way I can kind of like break it down and set it up a little bit more easily for me to use. But for my like rough draft, for my outline, Google Docs are perfectly fine. You can access it from your phone. You can access it from any device that basically has an internet connection. I think it's just it's not, it's not what it was designed for, like this software here. What was it? The
Late.
The
Lazy Dungeon Master.
Yep.
Lazy RPG campaign tablet by Sly. It
Yeah,
runs on
lazy.
the software Notion,
Mhm.
and that's just like honestly with Notion, I'm gonna come out and say it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel with it. Anything you're looking for with Notion, look up the Notion template for it because someone will have made it. I use it for my course tracking, I use it for my DMing, I use it for note taking, and I use nothing but templates.
And yeah, and also one last thing to add is at the end of the day, nothing substitute good old fashioned daydreaming for campaign settings. Sometimes you will just be sitting at your desk, just let your mind wander for 5 minutes, come up with a like just maybe remember a book you read, or how many times you watched the nude scenes in Game of Thrones. I don't judge. Probably you maybe have done it once or twice when you had HBO and you had nothing else going on.
Exactly. A campaign can have an orgy and everything's perfectly fine.
Okay.
I have straight up ran sessions that I had half a day to prepare and a lot of beer whenever it started, and they've worked out perfectly fine. Like
Oh, what? It always I daydream. Yeah, exactly. I just day. Okay, so anyway, back to what I was saying. You can have an entire campaign dedicated to just the different types of Oreos and have them basically be like goblin tribes where they fight each other over who's the best Oreo.
I have a
And
campaign literally. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, nothing wrong with that. That's all I was gonna say.
The campaign that we're going to be writing tonight is about gnomes and halflings fighting each other over moonshining, and all of the potions are moonshine. And it's stupid, but I just had the idea when I was literally episode 1 of my writing stream. All right, chat, themes do we want? I wrote that down. All of chat lost their mind for moonshining gnomes, and I'm like, welp, I'm writing moonshining gnomes.
And
Fair.
yeah. So I think that's probably obviously with the well, I think we've pretty much covered everything we can think of for setting. But yeah, that's just the start of it. We still have campaign, character creation, and then something I'm personally going to be interesting about is how do you make the players stay engaged with the world. That'll be like the fourth of this, and then the last one will be treasure, because in my opinion you need to have something, you need to have a goal. Treasure in my opinion is always the goal in my mind. It doesn't necessarily have to be treasure, but it has to be something that people would want to get, and I think that's probably the best.
Yeah.
That would be the best
Reward.
the reward, or where how we all wrap it up, basically. I think that's the best way to say
Yeah.
it. So with that being said, I think we've covered everything we wanted to talk about today about setting. I think it's best to say thank you so much to Remy for stopping by. You added a lot of knowledge to this topic that I don't think me and Shannon alone would have been able to provide. So I hope that if you are watching this on YouTube right now, just know this. These are not meant to be like the end all be all guide. These are just simply things that we would want to recommend to new players, because everyone would feel like when you play D&D, there is always that big hurdle from player to DM. It's always going to happen. You're always, if you played mostly your character but you really want to make a campaign but you are afraid to, I get that. This is just to show you that there are ways that you can make it easier on yourself and potentially come up with a great story that would inspire the next group of DMs who want to make their own campaign. Now, they're not going to always fit for everybody, and they're not the end-all be-all, but I hope that when you watch these videos, you understand that that from everyone here who has DM'd a campaign, we all started off somewhere down the line, and with experience, we grew, but to take that first step, we want to help you take that first step. So that's what I hope you can take away from this video.
Exactly. And if anyone has any suggestions or stuff we didn't cover that you think would be better covered like later on throughout this series, let us know. We're not, as we said, we're not the end all be all, and if we missed something that you think would be absolutely essential, don't be afraid to say so. We're open.
We are literally 3 nerds in a room talking about Dungeons and Dragons. We're definitely not the end all be all. We are not the Gary Gygax of this. I was invited to this podcast like 3 days ago.
Well, we hope you had a good time. So, Remy, do you have anything else you'd like to add before we end the show?
I guess it's gonna go back to the first question that you asked me. And my last thing that I'm going to add is just do it. The longer you spend trying to hammer out the small details on a setting that you want to get right is going to be the longer your players are going to wait and the less interested they're going to be on it. Don't be afraid to strike while the iron's hot and just make up the rest of it as you go. Like, get them invested, get them having fun, because that is the one and only rule of Dungeons and Dragons. You can literally take the mechanics of the game and make them so horrendously mangled that you don't recognize it as Dungeons and Dragons anymore. But it's all meant to be for fun. So however you and your players find that fun, it's not wrong. There is no wrong way to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly. It comes down to, do you want to find that information while your players are excited, or do you want to find that information while your players are bored waiting for you to get your shit together?
just jump into it. Go feet first. Your first campaign. I've said it at the beginning. I'm gonna say it here at the end. Your first campaign is gonna suck. It's gonna suck for you, maybe a little bit for the players, but it's a learning experience. You take all the shit sandwiches you ate trying to DM, and then you learn from it. Because Matt Mercer probably didn't have a great first campaign either.
Probably not.
Like whenever I don't know when he started playing D&D, but whenever he was learning, I'm sure he had a shit campaign that the players weren't excited about. But then he took that and he learned from it. And then he kept building and building and building. And now it's Matt fucking Mercer, like probably one of, if not the most iconic dungeon masters of our generation.
100%.
Probably up there with like Brandon Lee Mulligan.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Brennan is fun as hell to watch, especially like I love him on Dimension 20. I love him even more when he's
man,
like
he's so good.
no, and he's so funny. Like the Ori, okay, for those of you who don't know, Brendan Lee Mulligan is like the DM for Dimension 20, and then you have the Legend of Avernus people, but Brendan is like super funny as hell, especially if you've ever seen that video of him when he's doing the Oreo CEO. That video makes me laugh all the time. It's just, that's him to a T. Is like, just wackiness. I love him.
Oh god, what was it? Magic High?
Oh yeah.
And the scene with the pirate porn on Damien's computer will always kill me because he rolled with it. And he did such a phenomenal job in that one tiny improv scene that I was crying and rewinding like 13 times. But don't aim to be like them. Aim to be the best dungeon master you can be.
Right. And maybe
because you're not going to be them.
And maybe you do a campaign and you don't like how all the prep work or the story stuff and you find it's not for you. No harm, you tried it, didn't work out. You gave it your best shot, and that's all anyone can ask of you at the end of the day. Your players want what is best from you, is your best.
All right. Well, that's all from me then. I'm gonna have to bounce on over to, ironically, a D&D campaign.
We're gonna raid on out. Yeah,
D&D.
we're gonna raid on out. Well, we're gonna end this video here. Raid on out ourselves. Call it a night. Whatever. I will be seeing you all next week. Until then, keep safe, keep happy. The session is over. Now pay me my $20 for the pizza. Come on, folks. Chip in that $20 for that pizza. You know you need to.
I didn't.
Come on.
I didn't
Don't be
even get
greedy.
a slice.
You didn't want the one with pineapple on it.
I love pineapple. You didn't tell me about that. You said it had olives.
No. Okay. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.